Jeff from 2X Garage. Well, I'm back at Jimmy's place, and we are going to start machining the block for Todd's 388 small block that's going in the 1980 Z28 Camaro. So in a previous video, you showed us miking up all the pistons, measuring all that, checking what the paperwork said on these pistons for piston wall clearance. This is a small block 350. It's already been taken over, if you want to call it 30 thousandths over, and we went ahead and purchased 60 thousandths pistons. So the next step of this is actually boring this engine over and getting it honed. With that, what Jimmy's doing now is he's doing some measurements. We've already mic'd the pistons. We know what our piston wall clearance needs to be, but it's just not as simple as setting something at 60 thousandths over and running this thing down there. We're taking little cuts off at a time and measuring. And this is an old Van Norman 777S bore bar. And as you can see here, it's just a setup where it locks to the block. He's made sure it's true, and it centers in here with these fingers. And right now what he's doing is he's taking the cutting tool, which slides in here, making measurements, and we're going to put that in there, and we're going to do like a cleanup on here, and then we'll just keep measuring, making cuts to where we need to be at for these pistons. We won't take it exactly over to that point because we're going to leave a couple thousandths in there for our final hone on this. So with that, guys, we're going to go ahead and get machining on this, see what happens, and let's see if we can't get this 388 all machined up. See you in a few.
I can destroy it. Give me a hammer.
All right, so what Jimmy is doing is he's taking the cutting tool that you saw us take out of the machine, and he's going to adjust it out for the first cut. So I'll let Jimmy explain what he's got going on.
Well, you figure out what you're going to do. Well, how much a cut you need, and you can do it with an internal mic. You can do it with a pair of calipers. That's crude when you first start, but if you know what the bore is when you first start. We started with a block that was 30, but we didn't know for sure what the clearances was in it, so I had to use an internal mic and check that out, or a dial bore gauge will help, but internal mics is really more precision. Okay, using this boring bar that last time I used a Van Norman was in 1980, 79 or 80. I've used Quickway, but Van Normans are a little bit tougher to do, but one's as good as the other. I like the Quickway because it's easier to operate. But so right now, I'm just inching the tool up till I find out exactly what the bore size is. Right now, I'm at 35. I expect it to cut now. We know we're taking it out to where the pistons are 4-inch 058. So we're going to hone 2 thousandths. We're going to cut the bore 4-inch 058. We're going to hone 2 thousandths out of the cylinders, and then they'll be fitted.
Can I see that real quick, Jimmy?
Sure.
So here's the actual tool that goes in the bore bar, and that little tip right there is what actually does the cutting. So Jimmy's putting it in over here. Sorry about this. And this micrometer right here, he does his measuring, gets it set up. This slides into the tool, locks in place, goes down and starts cutting. So we're going to go check that out now. All right, so as you can see here, Jimmy put the tool in the bar. It goes up and finger out of the way before I cut it off. Now you can see it. Left my mic in the other room. Okay, so what Jimmy went ahead and did is he put the tool in the bore bar, and as you can see, it's going to go slow down and kind of making a cleanup cut.
See where the cylinder is worn, where it's cutting back here?
Yeah.
It's cutting now.
See if I can get a better shot of this.
It's definitely cutting.
So you can see where it's actually starting to cut. So it was at 4030, so it was a 30 thousandths over 350. So, Jimmy, what did you set the measurement at?
Right now the tool it's making the cylinder 4-inch 035.
So he went 4035. So we got more than one cut to make. This is just that first initial cut over the 4030, and we're just going to go ahead and let it run down there. So I will just throw this on time lapse and see you in a few. All right, so that first cut is actually done. So now this cylinder is true. It's 4035. We still got a little ways to go. That was just kind of a cleanup cut because this block was kind of rough. But here is that tool I was telling you about here. So in order to put this in, after you set it, you loosen this up right here, and you got a little tool that pulls that out. So let me kind of show you how that works real quick. Just loosen that up.
You get that screw loose?
Yep. And then that just pops out. And then you go measure your next cut. See you in a few. Okay, so now Jimmy's already done a cut at 4035. We got to go to 4058.
I'm taking it 45 now.
So now he's going to go 4045. So basically that tool, like he said earlier, sets in here and you just start measuring. So it's going to take that out to the appropriate side, lock it in place, well, loosen it first.
This thing's gonna make me mad first thing this morning. There we go. I got 2 thousandths to go. See, quick way it just adjusts easier than these Van Normans did. And go.
All right, so Jimmy's got it at 4045. And
4-inch 45.
what we're going to do is go ahead and go make our cut. And as you can see here in the background, those pistons have already all been mic'd. And actually they were all the same, but he's got them numbered for each hole. And he's going down and he is actually writing down all the different cuts for each cylinder. So what we're going to go do now is we're just going to go watch some really boring stuff. Get it? See you in a few. All right, this is kind of a below view of what you got going on. So you can see the cylinder's actually cleaning up pretty nice. Still got some more cuts. Jimmy, point out that cutter real quick.
What?
The cutter tool. So that's what he's got right there. So there's the actual cutter on the bottom of that bar right here. So he's going to pull it out, and we're going to go make another measurement to get this cut. But yeah, that's what it actually looks like right there, guys. You know, it comes down the cylinder and just cuts. So probably got one more cut on this cylinder before we go to the next. See you in a few. All right, real quick here. This is what we got working with. I should have showed you from the beginning. It is a Van Norman 777S bore bar. Jimmy went ahead and rebuilt this thing, but yeah, I mean, it's an oldie but a goodie. And basically the way this thing operates is pretty simple. So there's actually on this side here, there's like fingers. Let me see if I can't show you real quick. So you see that right there? That right there is on the cylinder next to the one that you're going to bore. And what you do is you lock it in place. Well, not lock it in place yet, but you go in here, and on the actual bore bar, there's these fingers that center it. Once you get it centered, you lock it in place. You go ahead and you come in here and you make sure that your mating surfaces all the way around are actually sitting flush, and use the feeler gauge to do that. That's kind of like the basic setup. Jimmy knows a whole lot more about it, but you have this is a wheel to sharpen those little carbide cutter bits that we were showing you in that tool. You have an engagement lever, push that in, flip switch, bore bar goes down. We have it actually set on low. There's 2 speeds. We're going low with this, not high speed, kind of a finer cut. But yeah, that's kind of a real basic overview of the actual bore bar we got going on here. This is an old model, works very well. Kind of digging learning how to do this. See here, it's cutting pretty good. Here's a good shot here. There's where the actual tool slides into. And, you know, you got a bunch of different bits, carbide edges. This is the tool that you sharpen your carbide cutters with. Here's another cutter tool here. So, see if I can't get that in there. Yeah. So that's what we got working with here. Oh, there's Jimmy's T-bucket. So yeah, that is the Van Norman 777S bore bar. And we're working on getting that first cylinder done. This is a timely process, but we're going to get there. So see you in a few. All right, well, so this cylinder here is actually done. It's been cut to 4057, about 4058. So we got 2 to 3 thousandths to hone. Honing will be last, but I actually did a really good job cutting that. So our next step on this is actually going to be setting it up on the next cylinder. And what I'll do is I'll record that and I'll have Jimmy kind of walk through what we got going on here. See you in a few. There we go.
I got the bar run down in there, about yay far down the hole.
Okay.
Watch the bar. If you watch the bar, it should move. See it moving?
Yep.
Because it's centering itself.
So what he's got going on, I know the camera's over there, but he's actually centering this tool in here, so when this thing goes to cut, it's actually direct center.
Tighten it up
So you go ahead and tighten it up.
by hand.
And let me let me grab my camera and kind of show you what he's got going on here. Okay, so if you see in here, the actual tool itself, right here, the bore bar, there's little fingers in there. I know it's kind of hard to see, but there's little fingers in there. What he did was with that tool, he goes in there, puts the bar in there, pushes those out, and it centers it. Then you come up here and you lock it in place. And then on the back side, there's a little claw.
It's already in there.
It's already, yeah, what happens is it clamps down. So I can't get some light up in here. Clamps down on the actual, if you look in here, sorry about that. It's clamping down through the bottom. There's a better picture. So right here, this clamp, it pushes it down in there. And
it acts as a cam effect. As I'm pulling
right there.
up on this, the front fingers are pushing it down.
So that right there, that little bar, it's screwing into and it's locking this into place. Sorry for the shoddy camera work, but it is what it is. So you can see right there that bar going down in there. And this tool with the fingers locks it down, and then from the bottom it pushes up. So what it does is it locks the actual bore bar to the block. And then to make sure it's true, we'll take a feeler gauge and we're going to run it all the way around here on both sides to make sure that it's actually flush. See if I can get a better look at those teeth on there. So there's the bottom of the bore bar, and right there you can see one of those fingers. There's one on the other side, and when you move that out by adjusting it, it's going to center this bar within the cylinder. So when it starts cutting, it's cutting true. And then you go to the next cylinder, because they're right by each other, that bar comes down, not the bore bar, but the locking bar with that kind of fingered clamp comes down in here, threads into here, and locks it into place. See if I can get a little bit better on here. Yeah. So now you can kind of see what you got going on. So yeah, now it's locked into place with that right there. And next step is we're going to make sure it's flush. See you in a few. Okay, so Jimmy brought it up to the top. Saw those right there. There's different ones, those with this kit, and that's what ended up centering everything in place. And sorry, I said two. There's actually three. Four, sorry. And I need to learn how to count. But when that goes down in there and pushed out, what happens is it centers this to the cylinder. And you can see these are kind of rough in here. It's not actually that bad. It looks worse than it is. So, yeah, that's what we got going on. It's locked into place. What we need to do is actually take a feeler gauge along here, all the way across, like I said, just said on the other side, make sure it's actually sitting exactly flush with the block. We did check the deck on this. The deck is straight. The deck is fine. Yes, we'll clean it up a little bit more before assembly and get cleaning. But, yeah, that's where we're at. So we're going to go ahead and get that checked out, and we're going to start boring this engine block. See you in a few. All right, so our first cleanup cut that you saw us do there, based upon the other cylinders, and that was kind of our practice one on the first one to make sure we got it right.
These pistons are...
We went 4035 on the first cut because it was already 4030. So what our second cut is going to be is 4045. So here is the actual tool that comes with the kit for setting up the carbide cutter. It's very precise. Let's see that real quick, Jimmy. Yep. So, as you've seen us pull this out, this is actually what's doing the cutting. Set it in place like that. And what you'll do is you'll set it based upon here where you want this to go. So the further out this is, the more it's going to be able to cut. So that's how you kind of set it up. But you got to unloosen this here.
You got the wrong one anyhow. This is what I've been doing. Here, I'll show you how to do it. Okay, we're going to go the second cut. What did we do? Just make a 35?
We did 35, so we're going to go
Okay.
45.
Okay. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 45. That's what we did. No, that's what we're going to.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you loosen that little set screw?
No, I did not.
Oh. No, that wasn't. Oh.
So you see that little bit of play right there. That's because Jimmy's already set this at 4045 for our second cut. He's just making small incremental adjustments with it. Getting to where he wants it.
And sometimes you overshoot it, like about right now. I'm at 44.5. No, there's 44.5. Must have been 43.5. Because the tool jumps sometimes, or it don't take much to move it dead on 45.
So right now, that's going to be our second cut at 4045. And tighten a little set screw on that. Lock that into place. And we go put it in the machine. Show you how to do that. Jimmy's T-bucket again. Big block cord. All right. So here's the actual floor bar right here. What you do is you slide that in. Snaps into place. Little set screw on the side. Lock in place. And it's ready to cut. See you in a few. All right, well, so our 045 cut is done.
Here. Never mind. Let's get this thing set up. Get the set
So our
screw
next,
loose.
so our next cut
Back this off.
is going to be to
Just back it a little.
here's your 055.
Yep.
So I went ahead and set it at 055. So now what Jimmy does is he's going to actually turn the actual cutting tool you see back to where we have it set.
No offense, folks, and no offense to Jeff, but the reason I finally set the cutter, because if something screws up, I got to eat it. Number two, if you remember the Kung Fu show, listen, grasshopper, and learn.
I'm learning.
He's grasshopper right now.
Yeah.
He's learning.
I'm learning. I'm a hands-on learner, and he knows what he's doing. He's done this thousands of times, and I'll be honest, this is my first time. So,
But he's doing well.
gonna get it all figured out, and that way, once I get it figured out, Jimmy can sit back in a chair and just watch me work.
You ought to be thankful I ain't got a crank grinder.
Exactly.
Here. I want you to read something.
All right, so we went ahead and set the cutter to 4055, which is going to be our last cut on the cylinder, because we're going to do the remaining 2 to 3 thousandths on a hone. So basically all you do is you take this thing.
I did tighten it, didn't I, in there? Let me go check to make sure.
Yep.
I think I did. Let me make sure.
Always double check your work. We took a quick break, so Jimmy's going to go check to make sure that's tight. Otherwise, when you go to cut it, it's going to back that tool off, and it ain't going to cut right. So yeah, there is your set screw to hold the tool in place. Here's the slide and the actual bar. And you just take this thing like this, and you don't want to drop it.
No, because you'll chip the carbide and push it till it locks.
You heard that? It didn't lock.
No, cram it in there.
All you do is push it in. You heard it lock.
Yep.
Take your screwdriver. Get your set screw straight. Try to do two things. Oh, there we go. Okay. Now,
I actually think what that does is that little knob there
yeah.
goes into a hole with like a detent or something on. Because you notice it's angled here.
Yeah, it just locks that in place.
It's shiny back here, so I got a feeling that when that locks in, it just makes sure that the tool, in case the set screw came loose, it didn't pop.
Doesn't want to come out.
Cutting. That could be really bad.
So the next step, you have your on-off switch, right?
Hang on.
Well, you got to make sure.
I'm going to run it close to the bar.
Yep, so Jimmy runs it down close to the bar. You can see how close that is, right in there. And what happens is that thing starts spinning and cutting. So flip that on.
Push this in.
You got an engagement wheel to get the gauges going.
All you have to do is push it in.
Just push it in. And what'll happen is that thing starts cutting. And that's how this thing works. We've gone through 2 cylinders on this. I'm not going to show all of them step by step. I'll just do some time lapse, let it rip, have some fun. But what happens is, as this thing's cutting, it's an auto feed down. So that bar goes down into there. Now you got to be careful. You don't want it to get down in the mains. This thing does not have an auto shut off or auto disengage. So we actually have it marked. When it gets to this mark, we know it's out. We shut it off, back it off. And like I said, we are in low gear. You do not cut in high gear per the manual. For a very, very small bore, like for a motorcycle, you can go high. But for a car engine, you got to keep it.
The instructions said nothing over
you got
3 7/8 bore.
Yeah, 3 7/8 bore and smaller, you can go high. But, so yeah, basically, get up in here.
The feel is finished when it's done. It feels like it's one just as smooth.
So it's cutting. A little bit at a time. It's all you need. And you can see it coming down towards the bottom here. And this is where you got to be careful so you don't get into the mains. This isn't something you turn on and just walk away. Getting close. All right. So we are out of the hole. You hear it quit cutting, so you can see we're out of the hole here. See it's out right there. We did a cut. So that was the final cut on this cylinder. So now what Jimmy's doing,
You have to back the boring bar up,
got to back it up.
disengage it.
You disengage it by pulling that out.
And I'll show you why. Because the teeth on this thing are at an angle. So you have to back the bar up so it's backing it out of the engagement.
So you want to make sure those are disengaged. It's got a handle here, and
It's got multiple places to hook it up to. Ready? There we go.
so you just turn that out. And your whole goal is it'll actually stop on its own where it's completely out, which is about right there. Hear it pop.
Okay.
And then you go back here, and you loosen that screw. Right there. You grab your hook tool, and if you look here on the side, where that carbide bit sets in there. That tool actually goes in there.
It's a set screw that holds the
Just give it a little bit of pop. You don't have to yank it. Just give it a little pop. Take it out. You go in, ready to do your next measurement. Like I said, this cylinder is on it. That was its last cut. It's got 2 to 3 thousandths left to hone on that. We'll do all that last, but what we're going to do is we'll take this and we'll move this out of the way. We'll check the bore diameter, make sure it's exactly where we need it, and we'll go on to the next one. So, yeah, that is actually the old Van Norman 77S bore bar. We're going to get busy on this. Hope you guys learned a couple things. I'm learning a lot from Jimmy. He's been doing this for way more years than I've even been alive. So we'll see you soon. All right, so here's the fun part. That cylinder is done. Now you got to move it. So what Jimmy's doing is there's the clamp bar in the back that I showed you earlier. He's taking that off. We'll kind of show you what that looks like. So got the rod. It goes to the bar. That clamps down to the actual Van Norman machine. That goes through right here.
Goes through that thing.
And then here's that big clamp. So that clamp.
Tighten it down, it cams this down.
Yep. So it goes into there, locks it into place. This is all pretty heavy duty steel. This isn't, cheap new age garbage made from overseas. It's good old American steel. Heavy duty. This machine's probably what, Jimmy, 50 years old? Maybe older?
The book said 1962.
1962.
But the school bought it in 1950, the school bought it in 1977. So I got a feeling, because they made these bars for like half past forever. The first one was a 777, then the S came along. That was the improved model, and it was a little bigger. But the deal is, the college bought it, and when I took it apart to replace the seal and to repaint everything, I gave it a once-over, looked it over, and the big bronze gear inside here, the drive gear for the feed, there was absolutely no wear on it.
Yeah. So
it just had very minute shiny spots on the bronze. I don't think this thing ever bored 3 inches in its whole life.
So Jimmy got this from an old high school. That's also where we got our Sun distributor machine.
It was a college.
Oh, sorry, college. The distributor machine came out of a high school in Chicago. But if you can find stuff like that, it's generally speaking not used very much. So, yeah, that's kind of a neat little thing. All right, so now we got to move this thing. This thing does weigh a lot. It's definitely not light. Like I said, it's good old American steel, where they actually made things to last. This thing could have been made in the 1962-ish era. I was born in 79. So this thing already had its driver's license and was almost an adult by the time I came along. So it's got a hookup here.
Now it's like me, it's on Social Security.
Yeah. Jimmy and my dad grew up together, and they're actually a couple weeks apart in age. All right, so as you can see, Jimmy's got this nice, cool crane. And what he's going to do is he lifted it off the crane. If you look here, here's that centering mechanism. And let's see if we can get a shot of what Jimmy's going to be doing with that. So when this thing sits down in there, okay. So the way he actually moves this thing around, he's got this nice electric hoist on a steel I-beam. Just picks it up with that hook that's built in for it. You see it right there. Beats the hell out of breaking your back. And kind of the way this thing works is you'll do 2 cylinders and then you'll move it. So if you're going to do this one like we started off with, start here, bore it, then you turn it, bore the next one.
Absolutely perfect. That means it's holding its own weight. That means when we finish honing it,
Nice and
final
tight.
fit. So evidently we bored 2 cylinders and didn't screw either one of them up.
That's a good thing. So like I was saying is when you first do this, you're going to start off with this cylinder. You lock it into place with this cylinder. So the machine sits, do your bore, you turn it, you do your bore. Okay? So then what you got to do to get the other ones done is you move this to the next one. So you'll bore this, spin it, and you'll bore the next one.
So this is an anchoring clamp, and just to show
Here.
the people on the video, this is the original anchoring clamp that came with the machine, and you hook this off the bottom of the cylinder and tighten this up, and then that big iron piece goes across there. Well, that was fine for back in the day, but a lot of V8 motors don't fit the bill. And then there was a bigger one for tractors and diesel engines and stuff. So I've been a machinist my whole life. I was a tool maker as well as automotive machinist, as well as a gunsmith. I built guns too. But the bottom line of it is with it all being said and done, Quickway, who I really like Quickway boring bars, their clamp looks basically like this. And I just got done making this one here recently. It makes the setup on this Van Norman boring bar so much simpler. And I machined all this out. It works just perfect. With a little fine tuning after I got it machined. But it works perfect. It's a whole lot quicker to set it up than the original Van Norman anchoring clamp. And if anybody wants one, I'll gladly build them one.
That's the nice part about coming over here to Jimmy's. If he doesn't have it, he's going to make it. And if it needs to be improved, he's going to make it better.
Oh yeah, I've bought stuff before, turn around like, this thing garbage. Re-engineered it, or just took it apart, machined it, put it back together, worked perfect. Make sure the deck is flat still, there was no chips or anything on it. By the way, this is going to get surfaced when it gets all said and done, but I did check it with a flat bar and a feeler gauge, and it was good enough to set the boring bar on. So, we've done that. We're going to put it back on there. Be sure to wipe the bottom of the bar off with your hand, not a rag. Don't use a rag on anything because it'll lint sometimes, will catch, and you're talking, if it gets thrown off course, it's not sitting flat by a thousandth of an inch. Here might be 3/1000th on the other end. So, with all that being said and done, get this back here where we want it.
So what he's going to do next is he's going to center the bore bar in there. So when we go to cut this, it's true centered hole.
Yeah, tools out. Run this about 3/4 of the way down the cylinder. The book says about this far down from the top. There's all kinds of theories about that. My personal opinion, if you've got a hole that's worn, the cylinder always wears at a taper, wider at the top than the bottom. So if you center it off the bottom, it's going to most likely be more true, because you're also, the further the shaft, the boring shaft is, the head or the shaft that holds the cutter bit, you're down in the bottom, so you have less chance of, if you center it up here, it's liable to bore crooked, come down to the bottom by the time you're at the bottom. So that's just the world according to me.
There's a million ways to skin a cat. Jimmy skinned quite a few. He's got a good method. So here's that back here. He put in that clamp we were talking about. Then what he's going to do, he's got the big heavy piece of steel.
Put their fancy concave nut that they gave us on here.
Yeah.
Here, put it in the middle. There, I got it.
Okay, so what that's doing is it's actually going to clamp it to the block. So
it's going to raise up on the rear of this arm, and it's kind of like a lever effect. Raising up on the front of the arm and pushing down on the boring bar at the same time. And you have to cramp it down. Where's feeler gauges? Now, if you want to be sure, take a 1.5 thousandths feeler gauge and try to stick it between the boring bar and the block. It's not going to, it won't go under there. You're perfectly fine. But if it does go under there, that means you got something crooked. And it'll be at the widest point is where the crookedness is. Okay. Plug the lip. We are about ready to go.
Jimmy also built this cool table, this cool engine jig, if you want to call it. That's what I'm going to call it. Kind of neat. And if you look, nice table, it rolls around, it's all steel. Jimmy's a hell of a welder too. And that engine block sits at it, so the actual cylinder deck itself is flat. And the engine block bore bar sits on there, goes down, bores. Nice solid setup, really like it. I'm learning a lot.
Extract the centering feet, or cat's paws as these people call it.
We do our first cut.
Put the brake on so the centering fingers can't come back out. I gotta go get a tool. I've already got it set, I think.
Okay, so what he's got going on here now, these are the cat's paws he's referring to. What those cat paws do, there's 4 of them, comes down in here, get it centered. Those cat's paws center it down in the cylinder. 4 points contact, make sure that thing Is it moved around, straight, it's dead center. So when you go to cut, it actually cuts straight.
Just a second. I'm going to make sure I lock the tool.
So what Jimmy's going to do is he's already set the tool for the first cut. And we are going to make our first cut. See you in a few. All right, well, we got it bored. So it was my first time boring an engine block, and it was really boring. Get it? So yeah, basically what we got left to do is hone this thing, chamfer it, a little bit of machine work here and there, put it in the hot tank, clean it up, start assembling. But yeah, so that was my first time doing stuff like this. Learned a lot. By the time we got to doing this side, I was actually doing the measuring Jimmy had shown earlier, and was kind of doing it somewhat solo with Jimmy watching me. So yeah, turned out really good. Pretty happy with it.
You did pretty good for a rookie.
Yeah, pretty good for a rookie. So yeah, that's what we got going on. Hope you guys enjoyed that video. A little bit longer than normal, but you know what? It's a learning lesson for me. Learned a lot. Like I said, Jimmy's done this thousands of times. This is my first time. Thought it went pretty well. Yeah, there's the old Van Norman 77S.
Yeah,
sure you guys will be seeing more of that.
After about 400 or 500 blocks, you'll learn to hate it.
I actually enjoy this work. See you guys tomorrow.